Okay, hey everyone, welcome to our final week of readings for this course. I'm not going to go through all of these pages in depth right now. I'm going to focus on project 3 in this recording, but just to make sure we walk through this, you are experiencing, I'll call it, selections from Langston Hughes's poetry this week. We're returning to those vernacular roots for this week. You are hopefully going to be able to watch the few selected videos I put in for your additional resources. You're discussing, sorry, Their Eyes Were Watching God this week, and working on your final project for the class. So you can see that you're going to be listening actually to all of these selections this week and writing about them in your journal. You remember, you don't need to write individually about each one unless you would like to. Some of you might find that more fruitful, but in general, you do need to write 3 interesting things, 3 questions, and 3 ways that you can make connections with these works as a whole. Right? And you have 3 crash course videos, 2 from Crash Course Black American History and 1 from Crash Course Literature. And the discussion questions for this week are really about this use of speech and the vernacular dialect. And then we get into project 3, which is your final exam for the course. So you are going to imagine that you're creating your own African American literature course. But instead of creating a course like ours, which is a broad survey where we sample from lots of different texts over a given period of time, you are going to choose some other way of presenting your course. It'll be a thematic study focused on a particular theme, and that theme could be grounded in one era of history and literature, or it could span multiple eras, like our course does. You know, and you are going to be choosing works that speak in some way to that same theme. I gave you a link to an essay that I wrote a few years ago when I took women's literature with Professor Rachel Lutwick-Diener. I took it just for fun because she was my colleague, she was teaching it, and my husband had a class at that same time. So I thought, you know, that'd just be kind of a fun thing to do. I love the class. If you are looking for another literature class and you haven't taken that one yet, please sign up with Professor Lutwick-Diener. She is amazing. So I gave you the essay that I wrote, which for ours was a similar project, except that we did have to write a 10-page essay. I negotiated for more pages because I needed more pages for mine. And what we had to do was imagine that we were writing the introduction to the anthology collection. I'm asking you more of an explanation of why each of these works would suit your course. And you don't have to write an essay. You're going to be probably most, if not all of you, will use Google Slides or PowerPoint to create your project. I did give you last week a presentation with all of the instructions, so we'll take a quick look at that. I apologize for how slow my machine is here. It's a combination of a dinosaur of a computer and very slow internet. And here we go, project 3, annotated anthology. Right, so you're imagining, again, this is your introduction that I just gave you. But again, you're just imagining that you're creating your own African American literature course. It's a thematic course. and you're going to focus in on 7 to 10 different works that all speak in some way to that theme that are created by African Americans or Black Americans. So you want to choose a theme that's of interest to you. We've talked about many different themes this semester. We've encountered them in our reading. We've got some lists in other areas where we've, kind of talked about, we've got ideas about family, about faith, about community, about political activism, human rights, all of those kinds of things. And I give you an example here, like growing up Black could be a good theme for some of you to choose. And then you're going to find 7 to 10 works by African Americans, Black Americans, dealing in some way with your chosen theme. And you can think in broader terms than just poetry, novels, essays, but you can even expand beyond into music, movies, television shows, children's literature. We haven't really done any children's literature in this course, but if you wanted to include some children's literature, that would be fine. At least 2 of your works, of the works you choose, have to be written. They have to be actual, like, originally written pieces, and the others can expand beyond that. You can include artwork if that somehow fits your theme. And then you want to think about the ways that each of these works speaks to that theme. What does it say about that theme? What does it teach us about that theme? What kinds of questions does it inspire us to ask about that theme, and explorations we could take? And do some webbing, mapping, charting, listing to lay everything out to find the connections. And that is what you're going to be submitting to me on Blackboard by the end of this week, is these 7 to 10 works, and then the way that you feel they fit together to explore your theme, and the order that you want them in, that you think you'll want them in, because you may revise it and change them. But for right now, I want to see that you have thought about an order that you would use to present them. So decide on the order that you want to use. Right now, we're just testing it out, but by the time you, of course, submit it, you'll have the order definitely worked out. So how would you want them to appear? Do you want them to appear chronologically, like we've been doing in this course? Do you want them by genre, like all the poetry together, all of the essays together, etc.? Or do you want to look at the different perspectives of the theme, which was kind of the method I used in my essay about growing up other? Do you want to put them in alphabetically because you're not really sure how else, and you think maybe alphabetically would work somehow? That might take more, if you were to actually ever teach that class, that might take some more imagination and creativity in your teaching, which could be a lot of fun. And then you want to prepare your presentation. You'll need at least one introduction slide, if not more, that includes the title of your anthology. So your title of your project, basically your anthology, and an explanation of the theme that is in that anthology. Like, what theme are you talking about? So you can't just call your anthology family. That wouldn't be very interesting. Give us an interesting title. Think in terms of movies and the kinds of movies you want to watch based on their title, and then how that relates to the theme. Explain that to us. And you may have more than one slide for that, because remember, you don't want too much text on any one slide. You want the text to be reasonably sized. For example, when I'm creating my agendas for this class and the other classes that I teach, I aim to have around size 16 text on a slide. Sometimes I have to go smaller, sometimes I can go a bit bigger, but I don't want it to be size 12 all crammed together like you would in an essay. Otherwise, you should just write an essay. Okay. So then for each of the 7 to 10 works that you've chosen, you need at least 2 slides. One slide should have the title, the author or authors, the genre, and then an image. So it could be, a book cover. It could be a song, album cover art or something. It could be an image of the author or authors or something related to that work. And then your next slide needs to give a brief summary of the work and how it illustrates the theme. And again, you don't want a lot of text, too much text on the slides. So think in terms of bullet pointed information. You're going to be creating a recording of yourself presenting this so you can leave the detailed information for the presentation. And then you have your conclusion after you've presented all of your works, and you may use more than 2 slides, by the way, for various ones, and you don't have to have the same number for all of them. So you could have 3 slides for one work, and then 2 slides for another and 4 for another. Just depends on what you need to share and how much space you need for it. And then your conclusion is going to be, you need to say something about that theme, something that ties everything together. And then you want to present 1 to 3 big questions you would want your imaginary class to explore as they study the works you have chosen. And finally, you will want to have a works cited slide or slides, depending on how much space you need, with the citations in MLA format. That means you cannot just post links or list a title. You have to use MLA formatting. And if you're not sure how MLA formatting works, you can ask me. You can go to the Language Arts Lab. You can Google it. Purdue OWL, OWL, Online Writing Lab is what OWL stands for, is a great resource for that. Just put in Purdue OWL in Google and it'll pop up, and you can go to the MLA section and you can get everything you need to know about works cited pages and creating your citations. But the point here is, if you don't know how to do it, please ask for help. All right. And then you're going to record your presentation. So for some of you, you may need to write up some sort of a script only for your own use. You don't need to turn that in. Others, it'll be enough you'll know your things well enough by looking at your slides. You won't have to write your own script. And some might want to do something in between that, where you give more detailed PowerPoints, more detailed bullet points for yourself as you're doing your recording. Again, if you don't know how to do recordings in PowerPoint or in Google Slides, please let me know. I do have some videos that I have made in the past. I'm going to review them today and make sure that the information is up to date. And if it is, I'll go ahead and share those. I'll add them to this particular slide here, and I will share them on Blackboard for you. Your final recorded presentation is due on Blackboard by 11 a.m. Tuesday, December 14th. That is during our final exam week, and that gives me 2 days to grade them all and submit your grades. So I need them by 11 a.m. on Tuesday, December 14th. And I can't think right now of any questions that I can anticipate you having. I'm sure many of you have questions. So if you do, please, emailing me sooner rather than later is best. And remember that you can always ask for a Zoom meeting too, if you want to talk about things rather than emailing them. I'll do my best to accommodate your schedule for a meeting. Right. So that is all on that. Let's go back to this week. Let's see. Okay, So we just went over those complete instructions. This week, you are selecting your 7 to 10 texts, thinking about how they fit the theme, doing any of that webbing, mapping, whatnot that you need to do, determining the order that you want them to appear. And again, you're not glued into this particular order if you start actually putting your presentation together and realizing that you need to move some things around, that's okay. But right now, this is to help hold you accountable and keep you on track so that you are not scrambling at the last minute and then not putting together the best presentation you can. Because remember, this does serve as your final exam for the class. So again, your 7 to 10 texts and order information is due on Monday. There's space for you to submit that in Blackboard. And then next week on Thursday, I'm going to have you submit a draft to me. Keep in mind, I'm not going to be grading these drafts. I'm going to be looking at them to see if there's any area that you need a little bit of advice or a boost or something, or to remind you of anything that needs to be reminded. But I'm not going to be going through and picking through them and grading the drafts. Again, this is more to keep you accountable. What you can do is in your discussion groups, you can set up a forum where you can share your drafts with each other and do some kind of informal peer review on that. Or you can take your draft to the Language Arts Lab either in person or via Zoom and have a tutor go through it with you and give you the more detailed one-on-one kind of feedback session for that. I'm not requiring group peer reviews this time, just because I know this is an incredibly busy time of semester for many of you who are finishing projects for other classes, getting ready for final exams in other classes, maybe you have big lab things going on, whatnot, plus your regular lives. So it's going to be up to you and your groups to share with each other if you would like to do that. The final project again is due by 11 a.m. Tuesday, December 14th. And that is a firm deadline, just like any final exam would be. So please get that scheduled in as soon as you can. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So your assignments due this week. Your initial discussion post of Their Eyes Were Watching God is due on Thursday like normal. Your reading journal, the rest of your discussion, and the texts for your project are all due on Monday by the 11th, but Monday the 6th by 11 a.m. And of course, you can turn those in anytime before then. Yeah, so if you have any questions or concerns, contacting me sooner rather than later is always better, especially if your emails come in at a time where I can't respond to them right away. So please let me know if you need anything. I am here to support you, and I look forward to seeing the work that you're doing.